Primetime local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
And welcome back to Primetime Local News this week. I'm filling in for Michaela to start Monday off, and I'm joined as always by Elise Darwish. So most of the area seems to be ravaged by sickness, and that has certainly hit our newsroom as well. And now with the outbreak of measles, there's one documented outbreak of measles. The question of the day is whether vaccinations should be mandatory. I seem to be getting a lot of yeses from people.
Yeah, I think probably it's a benefit to have, and if you can avoid something like the measles, and why not, right? So that's kind of
absolutely.
my thought.
And we'll also check in with Brett Holden as well, and that's going to come up just now. So let's go to Brett.
Well, tax season is coming up, and we are here at Leckie & Associates, where we will be talking to Michael about just the right way to get your taxes and file your taxes. We are also going to be talking to Michael about some of the misconceptions that can be around taxes. And as you can see here, we are joined by the Leckie & Associates family. So that'll be coming up this hour. As I mentioned, we'll be talking to Michael Naylor about that. Let's head back into the studio now, where Elise has a look at your local news.
And with the extreme cold warning back in effect, car owners should take the proper steps to make sure their cars run properly. To prevent your vehicle from not starting, having it plugged in is the best way to keep it running.
So ideally, in this cold weather, you'd want to at least plug it in probably at least an hour before you're wanting to go somewhere. With the extreme cold we've been having, a few hours is probably ideal.
Other recommendations include making sure your battery is working properly and switching over to synthetic oil during the colder months.
Your oil, having synthetic oil at this time of year is definitely a little easier on the engine, and your antifreeze, making sure it has the right mixture so that your coolant or your water in the engine doesn't freeze is definitely a good check to have.
The extreme cold warning is expected to be in effect till Wednesday afternoon. And this Saturday, people across Canada got to experience what those less fortunate go through during the winter months. The event is a walkathon in the cold, so people can experience what some people may go through every day. The Men's Shelter has been participating in this event for the last 5 years. This year is setting out a goal of $20,000.
This weekend was phenomenal. We had reached our goal by the time our walk started. We had a bumper crop of people bringing in their pledges the day of the walk, so that's fantastic. And we continue to accept donations for coldest night of the year right up until the end of March.
This event is not only in Lloydminster, but across Canada, which had over 70,000 donors.
It's across Canada in 133 different communities. So the goal across Canada was $5 million, and us Canadians have exceeded that goal as well, 5.2.
The Men's Shelter is still accepting donations for winter clothes, food items, as well as cash donations. And Lloydminster teens between the ages of 10 and 16 have the opportunity to learn about entrepreneurship through Biz Kids. The summer program pairs teens with a mentor and allows them to experience being an entrepreneur, something that Phyllis Mackey says gives the kids the ability to create their own job.
It's an opportunity down the road that if they're having difficulty finding a job that they particularly like or really love doing, that they can create employment for themselves by starting their own business. So if they've got a skill set and an education, that will allow them to do that.
Mackey also says that any jobs today require an entrepreneur skill set.
They think that they're going to become a doctor or a lawyer or a pharmacist or an accountant, and most of those people are actually entrepreneurs. They think of them as being professionals, but dentists run their own clinics, their own offices. Accountants have their own offices, so they're in fact entrepreneurs.
To learn more about Biz Kids, you can contact Community Futures at their website or through social media. And diet supplements have been around for over a decade now, and in this week's retrospect, I take a look at what has changed in the industry.
It's a $50 billion industry in North America, but a recent editorial in the Canadian Medical Association Journal says it doesn't pay off for obese Canadians.
It's hard to say from one bottle to the next what's actually in there.
Pharmacies are a hot spot for many commercial weight loss products, but Tim Hines refuses to sell the over-the-counter aids in his store.
They delay you from, starting on the path to making the right choices, to reducing your portions, to getting some exercise, eating right, getting some rest. Because without those three things, anything that we do for you with a product, even if it does help for the short term, is just a short fix.
They're fairly popular.
However, this store owner backs the full supply of supplements that fill his shelves.
They don't work for everybody for sure, but at the very worst, they don't harm you. They're totally natural substances. In every product, we have a list of ingredients, and they're all natural.
Flash forward 10 years, and consumers of diet supplements have more information about the product as more research has gone into using them over the years.
One of the things that's really growing is kind of the food, protein foods. So just regular foods that a person would normally have, like snacks, candies, but with protein added to them, and usually a lot lower sugar than normal. That's probably the biggest growth we've seen.
Jan says most people are now aware that supplements are to be used with exercise and healthy eating habits instead of just replacing working out. With constant research going into it, we are learning new ways to use them all the time, such as freeze-dried vegetable powders.
With vegetables and fruits, throughout the years, just with some of the farming practices, the nutrient value has gone down a little bit. Right. So it is kind of good to supplement with a product like this.
Healthy eating and exercise is important no matter what supplements you use. That's it for this week's Retrospect.
Retrospect this week is brought to you by Webb's Ford. Worth your while to drive the extra mile. Webb's Ford in Vermilion.
And now we're going to go to Brett Holden, who is on location at Leckie & Associates.
Michael Naylor joins us now from here at Leckie & Associates. And Michael, we're talking about taxes, and obviously there's a whole lot around taxes, but let's start off very broad. What are some of the penalties if you don't do your taxes, and just the main focus of paying your taxes?
Yeah, well, sometimes folks feel that they don't need to file their taxes, and that's only the case when you don't owe, of course. And even if you are in a refund position, very good to file your taxes, get money back from the government, and also keep your eligibility for things like GST credits and the child care benefit. Penalties on not filing your taxes usually start at about 5% of the balance unpaid and go up from there.
So let's talk about now just some of those penalties as well. How much can that affect not only your credit score, but just your bank account as well?
Well, none of us like to give more money to the government than we have to. So, I guess anything you can keep in your own pocket is probably a good thing there. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll have a little bit more coming up from here at Leckie & Associates, where we're talking about, since the tax season's coming up, just how the right way to file your taxes. So that will be coming up in a little bit. Let's head back in the studio now, where Michaela has a look at your weather.
Thank you very much, Brett. Now, things did have a momentary dip into warm weather for us last week, but we're right back to where we've been most of February and January. That's right, way above, or way colder rather, than seasonal averages for this time of the year. We do have some sunlight today, which has helped keep some of the wind chill down, but as you can see, minus 21. A little bit colder than what we're used to, which is around minus 12, minus 13 for this time of the year. We actually had plus 14 back in 2012, so that was one very warm February. Minus 33, though, the year before. That's not a fun time at all. Not to mention, we have winds from the southwest, so that bumps our wind chill to about minus 24, minus 25. Now, you can see in this satellite radar map, some cloud cover coming, but we should have largely clear skies over the next 24 hours. Watches and warnings, that continues. Extreme cold warning across the region. For some reason, Edmonton is escaping it at the moment, but everywhere else in Alberta is completely covered. If you go out to Saskatchewan, the northeast is clear for now, but will eventually fall under this umbrella, while the rest of Saskatchewan certainly needs to make sure that they keep their doors closed and the heat on the rest of the week. Now, current temperatures out in Saskatchewan, Melfort at minus 22, Prince Albert at at -15, -22 as well for North Battleford rather, and -21 in Saskatoon, like it is here in Lloydminster. Edmonton at -16, Athabasca -16, Cold Lake -17, and Whitecourt, Jasper, Edson area -13, -14, and -12. Rocky Mountain House just a little bit colder at -18 degrees, and again that should be the pattern for the next couple of days. And we'll have more for you after the break.
Welcome back. Well, winning the battle of the mind is key as egg producers seek to address consumer perceptions. Gerard Lampow finds out about farm and food care.
Once we hit 2016, there was a decline in the overall positive impressions. So Farm and Food Care, there's 3 different provincial bodies, one in Ontario, one in Prince Edward Island, and here in Saskatchewan.
Clint Munchuk has a grain farm and a table egg business in Lanigan, Saskatchewan. He says consumers care about where their food comes from.
As we see more technology around social media, I think people are seeing more and more things about food, and people are genuinely interested to knowing how their food is actually being produced.
Munchuk shares with people who ask about his chicken operation and animal welfare.
I walked her through exactly how we raise our hens and showed her actually a video that I've posted on my YouTube channel that shows how the hens are treated. And at the end, she went, it's so great to actually see this is how you care about your birds.
Munchuk says producers need to tell their stories in the face of misinformation. One such issue is the neonics honeybee population debate.
Based on an event that happened back in 2006 to 2008, where there was a collapse of colonies in North America. A lot of people pegged this on a product called neonics, and what researchers found afterwards, there were multiple different issues around that time, including winter kill with the bee colonies. And what we see right now is there's actually increasing honeybee populations here in Canada and the United States, and we continue to use the product like neonics.
Honeybee colonies are up nearly 38% in the last 5 years. Munchuk encourages producers to reach out to consumers.
We need to talk to people with their heart. You know, you start with your heart and you can get into the science and the facts later, but you need to lead with your heart.
We have birds. Gerard Lampow, Primetime Local News.
That's your egg news. Sports is next, but first we'll take a look at your egg prices.
Every member of the City Centre Auto Body team has been through extensive training. We're constantly upgrading our team's education to reflect current collision repair technique.
Taking a look at your local sports now, the Lakeland Rustlers women's volleyball missed their chance at history in a heartbreaking fashion this weekend, but were still able to rally and take home hardware from the ACAC Championships this weekend. Josh Ryan has more on the final win of the 2019 season and final performances of the Rustlers star trio.
The Rustlers didn't end their season playing for the medal they had their sights on, but still embraced the moment by finishing with a bronze medal.
Very grateful for our opportunity, and being able to go out with a win was really important for us, and yeah, it feels really good. So yeah, just reflecting back and just very grateful for our opportunity to play.
It makes the summer feel a little bit better and the off season, so yeah, I'm real proud of my team.
That followed the emotional low of the previous evening when the Rustlers, after having already won a tiebreak thriller on Thursday, found themselves on the wrong end of another classic with the Briarcrest Clippers. A back-and-forth contentious match that ended their championship hopes.
I thought we definitely had them, and I thought we played well, so that it's kind of sucks to lose like that. Didn't even want to cry. I was just mad, and then by the time we got upstairs, yeah, then the tears started flowing because you kind of realized today was going to be our last game ever.
After such a draining experience Friday, one could have forgiven the Rustlers for coming out flat the following afternoon. However, the team's fitness and mental resolve was on full display against the Augustana Vikings.
I was really worried that the 2 5-set matches would come into play today, but I'm glad that I was proven wrong. For them to bounce back and play the way that we did today was a true testament to their character and, what those girls are capable of.
The trio of Becker, Sigurdsson, and Koos finished their collegiate career playing at the same level that brought their school 3 championship banners.
The biggest thing that we wanted to do was play together and play as a team one last time, whether that was this week or in 2 weeks. So it's pretty exciting for everyone to be a part of that, and we finally got to end the way that we wanted to play.
Once the match ended, new tears flowed, realizing it was the last time they get to share this feeling on a court.
I love these girls, and it's sad that I don't get to spend time with them as much anymore.
In the first hour of reflection, gratitude between players and coach was the only thought.
There's not much else that we could have asked for from him. He did everything for us. He game planned for us. He always made sure that we were prepared, and he made us the athletes and the people and the players that we are today.
Thankful for the group that I have, how they behave, how they treat each other, how they respect me, listen, and that we do things the right way. Everybody's committed to doing that within our program.
The end of this journey marks the beginning of a new one for the Rustlers program, filled with unknowns but plenty of promise, built in part thanks to that very special trio. Josh Ryan, Primetime Local News, Calgary.
And now we're going to go to Brett Holden, who's on location today.
Michael Naylor joins us once again here at Leckie & Associates. And Michael, let's now start talking about there's a lot that goes into taxes and what we can add to our taxes. What are the best ways to find what exactly that we can fit into, paying our taxes?
Well, there's a lot of deductions that are available out there. A lot of them, the CRA requires support of one form or another to, in the event that you do get audited. One thing that can help folks with getting together things like medical expenses, for example, prescriptions, is they can usually head down to their local pharmacy and get a summary of everything they've paid throughout the year. So that's one thing that can kind of is a bit of a shortcut instead of keeping every single prescription stub, and save your accountant a little bit of time too.
Now, let's talk about, for someone who's moved maybe halfway through the year, what are maybe some ways that we can look at filing our taxes for a situation like that or anything of that kind?
Sure, yeah. So, moving expenses can really, they can really add up fairly quickly and be a significant expense. So it is important to get that as a deduction on your tax return if you can. One thing that you can do is you don't necessarily actually need receipts for every gas fill up that you did when you were doing your move, or every meal that you had to pay. There's an opportunity to claim some of that under sort of simplified methods and claim it on a per kilometer basis. So that's one way that you can cut down on maybe the amount of receipts you kind of need to keep and save yourself a bit of time too.
Perfect. We'll have a little bit more coming up from here at Leckie & Associates. We are talking to Michael a little bit about just making sure you are filing your taxes and the best ways to file your taxes. More will be coming up from here, but let's head back into the studio now where Michaela has a look at your weather.
Thank you, Brett. Although we switched plans and Michaela is not going to give you that news. Here's a quick shot of the weather earlier this afternoon. Thanks, you guys. Always remember we can submit a photo of the weather, whether it's out by Bud Miller Park, out on the highway, throughout town, and it has a chance to be on the show. So nice shot there. Watches and warnings, again, just to remind everyone that basically everywhere in Alberta except Edmonton area is underneath that extreme cold warning. So be careful when you're outside, wear proper attire, and be careful while driving, certainly. That warning also in effect in Saskatchewan, a little clearing up in the northeast and northwest to a smaller extent there. Now, current temperatures here, you can see St. Walburg at -20, Meadow Lake at -18. It actually warms up the further up north you go in Saskatchewan, Isla Cross at -14. The same goes with -14 out in Lac La Biche, and as you go further south, things start to cool down, -20, -21, and then in Vegreville, -23. Edmonton, again, not in the extreme cold warning. They're sitting at -16, -21 in Wainwright, and -22 in Provost, -20 in Mackland, and then further down south there, -21 in Maidstone, and North Battleford is sitting at -22. They also have plenty of sunlight, but a little bit of a wind chill bump thanks to west-southwest winds of 13 kilometers. -34 overnight, 7 kilometers out of the southwest. -18 should be the high tomorrow, so still a pretty chilly day, and the wind speeds will be above 10 kilometers, so that'll bump it into the -22, 23 range for wind chill, even at the warmest point of the day. -17 rather in Cold Lake with 15-kilometer winds, and -13 overnight. -12 the high for tomorrow with winds out of the west, and again that'll bump the wind chill up a little bit. And here in Lloydminster, -21 over -30 overnight, but we'll actually warm up to -16 tomorrow, though the wind does pick up to 17 kilometers, maybe a couple of kilometers faster. And that will mean that it'll still feel like it's a -22, -23 sort of day, despite that slight uptick in temperature there. And finally, your 3-day forecast. -7 is the expected high, not tomorrow, but Wednesday, after a low of -30. So despite warming up tomorrow, the night still stays relatively cold. -7 and -19 for the low on Wednesday, though the wind again picks up to 22 kilometers. And now -13 should be the high on Thursday with a low of -17. And again, with 19-kilometer winds, that'll bump the wind chill into the low -20s. So we'll still be very cold here in Lloydminster. We'll have more for you after the break.
We are back here at Leckie & Associates, where Michael Naylor joins us once again. And Michael, let's talk about record keeping for the whole year. What are some of the best suggestions, or some suggestions rather, for keeping those records for the year?
Yeah, you know, the easiest thing to do is really to keep your receipts and records as you go throughout the year. Collect them as you go rather than trying to get them all together at the end. So one thing that works good for a lot of people is keeping a folder in their car, for example, a big envelope in their car where they stuff all the receipts that they get throughout the year. You know, usually when we pay for something, we're in our car. You know, happens quite a lot. Maybe you have a file folder at home, but just something where you're keeping these records as you go throughout the year and making notes makes it a lot easier than trying to piece it all together at the end.
Now let's talk to what can we claim. I'm sure we want to claim certain things, or maybe we don't want to claim certain things, but what can we claim and what should we be claiming?
Well, you know, there is a whole host of sort of boutique deductions that are out there, so you have to be a little bit careful. But one area where folks often get, where there's a bit of a misconception perhaps, is with employment expenses. So unless we have a specific conditions of employment signed with our employer, there's really not a lot of expenses that we can deduct from our employment income, unfortunately.
Now, we're running a little bit out of time here, but I do want to focus just really quickly about some common misconceptions that we could have around filing taxes.
Well, you know, I think the biggest one is that idea of expenses against employment. So, you know, you might need to buy a uniform or coveralls for work or something like that. And generally, those sort of expenses aren't deductible. They're sort of covered by a very general tax credit that's given to everybody that has employment income. So that's a big one. But you know, there's so many changes year to year. Probably a really good idea just to check what the new changes are on the CRA's website or with your accountant.
Perfect. We'll have a little bit more coming up from here at Leckie & Associates. But now let's head back into the studio where Michaela and Elise will be talking about your question of the day.
Thanks very much, Brett. Question of the day once again was, should vaccinations regarding the measles outbreak be mandatory? Yes, because it affects everyone, or no, it's up to the parents. 92% of you said yes. Yeah. So I think everyone seems to be in agreement on this particular issue.
Pretty much everybody's on board with that one. Yeah, for sure. I think it's important. I think if you have the way to prevent something like that from happening and outbreaking, why wouldn't you? I don't know. You'd want to protect your kids, maybe?
I'm sure if I had children, I would like them to be safe.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's go back to the Oscars really quick. You were
Okay.
saying you've only seen one of those movies that was nominated.
Yeah, so I watched A Star is Born, and I absolutely loved it. And that was the only one that I saw. I do want to see Green Book, which actually won. So Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody, I definitely want to see. So
What do
have you
think?
seen both of them?
I have not seen Bohemian Rhapsody yet,
Uh-huh.
which I want to check out.
Yeah.
Do you think the Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga stuff is legit, or people just overdoing
yeah, no, it was cool to see. It's weird because doesn't he have a wife?
He has a
sitting
wife
in the
who's,
audience?
I believe his wife was
Like,
pregnant. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're like, that's kind of uncomfortable to watch
Yeah.
together, but you know.
just the way people were speculating about it, I was like, you guys
Yeah.
realize he has a
Well, because she
wife.
just got rid of her engagement, right? So.
Yeah, that's hence all the
It's
speculation.
all the drama.
Now, we're not going to speculate anymore. Let's go right into Pet of the Day,
Yes, let's.
everyone's favorite subject. So Ronan looks like he's ready for battle, submitted
Yeah.
by Karen.
Cute.
Looks like those teeth are out there. Woody, submitted by
Aw.
Chelsea. Thank you very much.
Cute dog.
And we have Ehrlich, submitted by Kirsten. Yeah,
Ready for
Ehrlich's-
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
It's coming
a
up.
little ahead of the curve
Yeah.
there. Next, we have Steve, submitted by Christina. Aw.
Cats
Steve
love
Steve
to
knows
sit and sing.
Steve knows how to get comfortable. And finally, Finnegan, Molly, Tika,
Aw,
and
the whole
Sadie,
crew.
submitted by Alyssa. And remember, the PetPad gift card is yours if you can get your pick in time each week.
We want to see your pets. Send photos of your pet and their name to our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to have them featured on Pet of the Day. Your name will be entered into a weekly draw for a gift certificate from the Pet Pad.
Welcome back to Primetime Local News, and I'm joined once again by Greg Buchanan, but also Brett Holden joins us from the newsroom for a little bit of trade deadline talk, as that just finished a couple of hours ago. Now we have a few new looks for some teams that I don't think there's any real major splashes in terms of a generational player or a star that changes the fortunes of a team, but there are a couple of moves that should have an impact, and one of the ones that Canadian fans will obviously be interested in is Matt Hendricks from Minnesota, a guy that the Oilers fans know well. He's reacquired by the Jets for a 7th-round pick. What does that do for the Jets, Brett?
Right, exactly. Not a move exactly that you're going to be seeing on the front page of the paper. But I think what Hendricks brings is that leadership kind of mentality for that Winnipeg Jets team, a team that has a very young core and guys like Laine, Scheifele, Morrissey, Hallebuck, and being able, he was dressed for warm-ups when he played in Edmonton just because of that leadership kind of mentality that he brings. Obviously, we're talking too much into Matt Hendricks' trade, but that is something that he brings and something I want.
You know what? There's something to be said about that because you come into the playoffs and you have war, and really the playoffs are a war. You need soldiers, and he's not just a soldier; he's a bit of a leader of soldiers. So if you bring him in and he's a bottom 6 and doesn't get a lot of ice, you bring him in maybe a little bit of penalty kill because he did a little bit of that in Edmonton. You know, maybe that's something that they need because, you know what, if the Jets are going to the playoffs, they're going to go deep and it's going to get nasty at times.
And it's a reacquire, too.
Yep.
He's played there as well.
For sure. And another guy that I'm sure will try to help the war part of it is D-man Nathan Beaulieu. Did I pronounce that correctly? Beaulieu.
Yeah,
I knew I was mispronouncing that. So they only gave up a 6th-round pick for him as well to try to shore up their back line. Does that do enough for them considering they were really going hard after Mark Stone? And as we'll talk about later, didn't get to him.
Right. I think for Beaulieu, I think that's just a depth kind of third pairing kind of guy, a guy who's been third pairing not only in Buffalo but also in Montreal, so he's used to that kind of market.
And you saw a lot of depth moves today. Toronto makes a depth move. You know, Calgary to a certain extent does that too. So I think teams are shoring up for the playoffs, making sure you make sure you don't come short in the back end, make sure you have enough depth up front too. So you see little trades. Of course, you saw some big ones, but some of those depth trades are looking down the road.
And speaking of, is what we were alluding to earlier, Brandstrom, Lindbergh, and a 2nd-round pick for Mark Stone is the deal. So he's off to play in Vegas. What does that do for that team, which still could make a push for first in their division?
I think Mark Stone is the kind of guy we were talking about where he can produce not only offensively but defensively as well, whether that be just being on your guy all the time, or whether that be getting into a star's face, right? That's not necessarily a hey, he's getting secondary, primary assists. That's a guy who's doing his job and doing it right.
You know what? Mark Stone plays the game right, and he plays the game right in both ends. And more than anything, he's a guy, too, that you can put right in the middle between Carlson and Marchessault there in Vegas. Because right now, Smith is with those two, and Smith has been colder than cold. I think he's got 1 goal in 2019. So they got to do something to get Smitty going. So they drop him into the top 3, and then you have Pacioretty there too. Like, they're deep up front. And the thing is, everybody was a wild card last year. Nothing's a wild card this year with Vegas.
Now we only have a little bit of time here, so we got to go rapid fire and a couple of others. So really quick, Ryan Hartman and a pick from Nashville to Philadelphia for Wayne Simmons. Does that make a big difference for Predators?
Yeah, it does, because Nashville is a team that's going to go deep, and Simmons is a warrior, and he's got a guy that can get you points. But he can also, be physical and be in the face kind of guy. That's what Nashville needs.
And he fits in that organization well, too, that kind of game.
Really quickly, too, Oscar Fantenberg goes from LA to Calgary. That's my team. Do you think he plays any kind of role for them in the playoffs?
Calgary did nothing for the deadline today. They did nothing to get better at all.
Do you think they had to get better?
Absolutely, when it comes to playoff time. They don't, Johnny Gaudreau hasn't been there before. Their leaders haven't really been there yet, and if they could have brought in somebody, that would have been huge.
Calgary just has to go to the playoffs, get some games, and get experience in the playoffs. I don't think you want to give up your future for right now.
I also don't want to give up that future as a Flames fan. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have more on Primetime Local News. Welcome back to Primetime Local News. Josh and Bucky in studio. Pretty hectic sports weekend for athletes locally, not just in the Lloyd area, but competing outside of the region as well. We're going to start close to the region, though, or within the realms of the region, I guess, and to something that's dear to you, the Lloydminster Bandits. Their season, unfortunately, comes to an end in Killam. A bit of a wild one, to say the least.
Yeah, every time they were down 3-1 going into that series on Saturday night, you look back to that series, and really a lot was said in Game 4. The Bandits win it overtime in Game 3 on that Monday. On Tuesday, they had a 3-1 lead after one, couldn't hold on to that lead, lost in overtime to Killam, and that gave Killam a 3-1 series lead. The Bandits win Tuesday night. I think that series is completely different. They're going to Killam. Hostile environment, as they like to say.
Hostile indeed.
Yeah, it got a little. It was 2-2 going into the third, so anybody's game in the third, and the Killam gets a couple of goals, and they go up by 2, and then it gets, as they say in hockey terms, it gets a little Western. Nothing out of the ordinary with the Killam crowd, but you know what? Regardless of that, a good young team. Only one player graduates, and that's Danton Brooks. He's the goalie, and he's 21, but potential of every one of those players coming back for the team to get better. Probably there's going to be a few changes here and there, but look for the Bandits to be a team that is reckoned with. I think they have to solidify a few things in the back end. Up front, pretty good, but hopefully some lessons learned.
Yeah, I'm sure there's definitely some lessons learned of how to play in a hostile environment like they had without getting into some of the specifics. But with Danton Brooks leaving, that does leave a gaping hole in the middle. And do you think Eric Cook is up to the challenge if he's the guy?
Hard to say. I think Eric's going to look at his options in Junior A. He's only a 17-year-old, so he has some options at Junior A, and he's going to look at those. Goaltending is going to be somewhat of an area of concern, and with Michael Clegg on board for the next few years, he'll sign a contract extension, and look for him to try to find somebody to fill in for Brooksy.
Now, further away from Lloydminster, we had the Lakeland Rustlers, women's volleyball team competing at the conference championships at Ambrose University in Calgary. I was actually able to be there for part of the championship, and so I was able to see a high and a low. The low, of course, coming with a semifinal loss to the Briarcrest Clippers. They do not get a chance at 3 straight titles and 3 straight shots at a national championship. And then they do follow up with a good effort on the Saturday to win bronze. A bit of a disappointment, obviously, for the girls, but they played 3 really tough matches over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, and that's what you want to do. You came ready to play. The ball goes a different kind of way against Briarcrest. You get a couple of calls that maybe went against Lakeland, goes their way. It's a different outcome, and they're playing for a provincial championship again. Regardless of that, 2 straight provincial championships, looking for a third. it wasn't meant to be for them. But I you know, hearing everything about Friday's game was an exciting game and a good win against the host team. So, you know what, the Dyer boys on the boys' side and the guys' side, or in the girls' side of things, doing a great job with the volleyball programs, and look for the women's program to be right back to where they were this season.
Indeed, that's one of the things that's been talked a little bit. We've spent a lot of time on, obviously, the 3 girls that are graduating, Ray Sigurdson, Annika Koos, and Shelby Becker. You know, 3 fifth-year players are going to be very tough to replace, but they're all pretty excited about what is in the pipeline with this team. Janae Varga, who redshirted this year, should be good, and a couple of recruits that come in with some athleticism as well.
Well, we had Alan Rogan on here around Christmas time, and he talked about the success on the court has really developed into a great recruiting tool, and look for the Dyers to bring in great players for both the men's and the women's volleyball teams for next season.
Also, of course, exciting news that there's a couple of all-conference awards for the men's volleyball team, as well as Ray Sigurdson winning Player of the Year. So, exciting year for the team. Not quite the medal they wanted, but still a success on some level nonetheless. We'll have more on Primetime Local News later this hour.
Well, today we were here at Leckie & Associates where we're talking about getting ready for your taxes as tax season is coming up. Also the best ways to approach your taxes. We spoke to Michael Naylor about that. One of the things that he mentioned was even if you don't have your receipts throughout the year, you can go to places like your pharmacist who will be able to print out your end of the year receipt and things like that. So that was on tonight's show. That'll do it for me here tonight at Leckie & Associates. So for now, let's head back into the studio where Michaela and Elise will wrap up the rest of tonight's show.
Thank you, Brettster. -16 is the high for tomorrow with a low of -30, -7 on Wednesday. Despite that warming up, at least it's not going to be that warm with 22-kilometer winds for Pete's sake. -13 on Thursday, then -21 on Friday, -20 Saturday, slight warm up Sunday, Monday at -16, but again, those speedy winds come back. 24-kilometer winds on Monday. That is not going to be fun.
Yeah, it's not the best.
No.
It's not fun. Just trying to stay positive through this winter.
Yeah, you're the glass half full version of
I'm
this
usually not,
relationship.
so I feel like I have to because nobody else is.
Everyone else is glass half empty.
Everyone's over it, and that's fair. I'm over it too, but what can you do, right?
What can you do? And remember, question of the day, everyone is in agreement on this one?
Vaccinations, yes.
Yes, 93% of the population of Lloydminster and area all think the same way. Which
well, I mean, it's a good idea. I think you don't want, if you can avoid your kids and everyone else getting measles, I think that's probably a good idea.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been a fun show. Oscar talk.
Yeah.
And,
thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it was
always
it was
enjoy
a blast.
having Josh
I
Ryan
hope
on the
everyone
show.
managed to. Voice was pretty scratchy today, but
Everyone's
did what
sick.
I could.
It's fine.
And my knees are still sore from trying to do the news like Michaela.
You're old, Josh. You're old. What can you say?
As everyone constantly reminds me when we're in the newsroom.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elise. Thanks for joining us, folks. You have a great rest of your evening. We'll be back tomorrow.